CRN, Chuck Wilder. Let me tell you about my guest, Kimberly Dvorak, Dvorak. She is award-winning national security, border security investigative reporter for TV, radio, and the print media. She is the senior foreign policy advisor for the Committee for Responsible Foreign Policy, TV correspondent for CW6 News San Diego, as well as One America News Network. And her website is The KD Report. And she streams live at Periscope.com and Facebook and YouTube. And Kimberly, how are you?
I'm here. How about yourself, Chuck?
I am here also. Yes. Hey, interesting subject you have chosen today, biochemical terrorism. And I got to tell you something. I did a lot of research on this at one time, and I dug up some of the stuff that I have. And it's very interesting how far back this stuff goes. I mean, my goodness, it would surprise you, Kimberly. They have, apparently, as soon as somebody woke up, the first person to wake up on Earth, apparently said, how could I get to that guy, or that girl, or whatever? What would it work, Boiled milk or something like, boy, it goes way back.
It does go way back.
Right.
And it can be, I said it does go way back, and it can be frightening.
Yeah.
When I was trying to figure out this weekend what I was going to talk about, I wanted to talk about a topic that would, actually affect everyone and wouldn't be partisan, so not left or right issues. So this is what I came up with. It affects everybody. It should have no political party affiliation whatsoever. We have been victims of biochemical attacks in the past, as has Japan and other countries around the globe. So I just thought it was maybe a good time to talk about something for people to kind of just keep an eye on things when they're traveling around doing their vacations this summer. Pay attention to certain things, and perhaps we can prevent something like this from happening again in this country, because terrorists are actively looking for new ways to kill Americans.
Yeah, and every once in a while, a political entity will creep in and try to do something. There was, I'm trying to think, it was up in Oregon. I have it down here somewhere. Anyway, where they went out and poisoned, they didn't poison it necessarily. They wanted everyone to be sick so they couldn't go and vote because this cult had a member that was actually running for office.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, we'll get them all sick, and it didn't quite work out the way they wanted to.
Usually.
We had the Alphabet bomber.
Yeah.
Remember him? 74?
Yeah. Absolutely that, and we remember the Olympic alleged bomber, the one that actually was, convicted in the very end, not the one who was prematurely put to trial by a familiar name, Mr. Mueller. These kind of attacks kind of happen, and they actually have varying degrees of success, I guess, if you will. But with the latest frontier being the internet and the ability for people to purchase online DNA, now this gives rise to new fears, and I think that these new fears are what we should be concerned about.
And in case you didn't hear, by the way, Clint Eastwood getting ready to do a movie on that Atlanta Olympic,
I'm looking forward to it, because I don't think he's friends with Mr. Mueller.
Yeah. He said, I'm going to do it in Georgia.
Yep.
Okay, so the heck with you, Hollywood. There you go. And that's where it happened after all.
It did. So in any event, I think that, what we're looking at is a little different than maybe what the cavemen were just trying to, get their milk, as you were talking about, and let it sour up, and then they become pretty ill after that. I think, that's one way to do it. I think the new way, I think what they're doing out there now is much more concerning, and there's questions as to whether the United States is really on top of this issue altogether.
Well, and anthrax, that's the first one you mentioned in your report, and you get into Al-Qaeda, Iraq, and there's some bad stuff that Iran's been involved with too, and I'm going to find that on my list that I've got here, because you never know. The interesting thing about Iran, I do know the bottom line on it. Let me see here. Let me read this real quick as we go into the break. 1991, Allied forces began a ground war in Iraq There is no evidence that Iraq used chemical weapons. Schwarzkopf, the commander, suggested this may have been due to the fact of Iraqi fear of retaliation with nuclear weapons from the U.S. of A.
Yeah.
We're going to continue in just a moment. Kimberly Dvorak, Wilder, with Kimberly Dvorak, and she's streaming live, Periscope.com, Facebook, and it'll be on YouTube in no time at all. The Anthrax letters, that was, there was a lot of panic going on with that.
There was a
use of the weapon and being able to mail it in letters, and usually anybody said, "Oh, looky here, I got mail, blam."
Yeah.
And I always thought, well, it's unfortunate for the higher ups that have people that open their mail.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and when we look back at what happened after 9/11 on those series of letters were responsible for killing 5 Americans, infecting 17 others. Of course, it wasn't the congressmen and senators that the letters were directed to. It were the mail handlers that actually go through the mail that is completely off-site where the Capitol Hill is and that. So unfortunately, the intended targets were not the victims here. However, it did raise awareness to the Department of Homeland Security, which was being formed at the time to prevent against things of this nature. Most of us don't even, I think, really remember that too much. And what we need to do if we ever find ourselves in a situation where we believe there's some sort of biochemical attack happening. There, I mean, 3 easy steps. It's almost like when you're in a fire, you stop, drop, and roll. In this case, with the chemical attack, you actually flee the scene first. You remove your clothing and you shower to get the chemicals off of you as quickly as possible. You do those 3 things, and you're likely to survive an attack. And in this case, I'm referencing the sarin gas that actually there were survivors in Japan back in 1995 when they actually attacked the metro system in Japan. So the terrorists out there, again, they're always looking for something new to come after. We've seen limited results, I believe, at this time. We've been pretty good about it, or maybe we're lucky. Of course, they have to be right once. We have to be right every single time that it comes our direction. But there are now new biochemical attacks being planned, and I don't think Americans really know what they are and how easy it is for something like this to happen.
It's interesting, Kimberly, that you brought up in this, and back to anthrax, because people would say, well, they could see somebody shooting off a missile, all right, and it's full of anthrax and it's going to explode and blah, blah, blah.
Doesn't
and
work.
You said that the bacteria impact, because the amount of the heat released in the explosion would probably be destroyed.
Exactly.
And I find that so interesting because in my research, if you're ready for this, all right, October 1914, German artillery fired 3,000 shells that were filled with a lung irritant, and it was going to kill anyone there, right? Well, the shells contained too much TNT, and they destroyed the chemical, So thank goodness. And
live and learn, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, live and learn.
Yeah.
I don't think that's. People are try to I guess scare populations that aren't very well educated, that they can use the sarin and they can put it inside explosives and it's going to actually kill the entire city and kill millions. That's not actually going to happen. Not with sarin, not with bioweapons, biochemicals at this reach. Right now, what I've been reading, and there's been a new directive actually from the United States, and it's from the BioWatch and the BioShield people, and they're actually part of the NIAC, which is involved in the sciences for this country and protecting us. And what they're saying is that it's much easier for somebody to actually chemically, buy these, buy the DNA online, chemically, genetically change what's in the actual DNA, and then spread it massively around a country, and it has the potential to kill millions. Now, does Iraq have the ability to do that? No. Does Saudi Arabia have the ability to do that? No, but interesting, out of all the countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is one of the largest financiers of bioterrorism and trying to research what will work. So that's something that was new to me before I started doing my research on this. But the way they said that it's going to come out and actually kill people will be through like a pandemic flu. And a country like China actually has technology that something like that could take place, that could possibly kill millions of people. So this is what now the Americans on this front are kind of on their heels a little bit, because now we're reacting to what we're learning about what China's ability is in this bioterrorism, in the biochemical field. And we know they are researchers. We do know they steal an awful lot of intellectual property from the United States. And we also know the biggest issue right now is that you're able to purchase the DNA stuff online, which is something that probably should be monitored. I'm hoping that somebody higher up in the government is actually monitoring it and not really letting us know what's going on, because that's where we are going to see the danger moving forward. It's going to be something in the form of a pandemic, flu, a black plague, if you will, something where we just don't have the antibodies to protect against it.
You know, it is so interesting how you know, talk about China, all right, and the Chinese, and we know that even today they're a threat. But on the history of this whole thing, we go back to 1000 BC.
Woo, you were you were just a lad then. Just a lad you were.
I'm telling you. Arsenic, smoke, all right, was used by the Chinese, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess they floated it in balloons or something. Let me find the other one. Well, the poisoned drinking water, that was 600 BC. This is not China.
Yeah.
184 BC, the sea battle, Hannibal. Are you ready for this one? They hurled clay pots of vipers onto decks of enemy ships. Now that's
creative.
Kind of getting under the
that's
belt.
creative.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That is creative.
And then in London, they were throwing people who had smallpox plague over the city walls, trying to get them. Let's see, 1495, Spanish offered wine spiked with the blood of leprosy patients to the French. And that was near Naples. And I'll give you one more. In 1650, Polish artillery general, whatever, he used every letter in the alphabet anyway, he fired spears, and they were filled with saliva of rabid dogs at his enemies. My, you know, people get clever.
They do.
And now with all the technology we have, drones, missiles,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is a conversation that it's really ironic that last week I actually had a conversation about the use of drones and the reasoning behind, should we have a wall, should we not have a wall, type of situation. And you know, I turned around and started talking to this person I didn't know, and I said, well, do you realize, you know, inside the Beltway, they don't think that there's a world outside it, and say California doesn't, so it's kind of there, they know it's there, but it really doesn't exist. Most people don't realize around the country, unless you're living in Southern California, that, you know, we had gotten rid of mumps for the most part. Chicken pox were gone. And now we're seeing that children that have been born and raised in this country, when they become, you know, when they get into middle school or high school, are now having to get boosters in this, because people who have come to this country unlawfully and didn't go through the legal process are bringing these diseases into our country every single day now. So do we need a wall? Well, maybe it'll stop, you know, some of the people crossing illegally that are bringing and reintroducing these diseases that the United States had, for the most part, eradicated. And then, of course, this comes at a cost to hospital workers. It comes to the cost of taxpayers who are paying to treat these people, to, you know, put them in quarantine if they have to. This comes at a big cost. And people that you talk to out here, they were stunned, like, oh my gosh, no, that doesn't happen. That's not, I'm like, it absolutely does happen. And, you know, they just don't know about it, because the media here does not want people to realize what's really happening when it comes to that. And then the biggest fear here with the DEA, when you talk to DEA here, the biggest fear they are looking at, and this is with the drug war, they're saying, how easy is it for someone to take a drone that they purchase at Toys R Us or Radio Shack or I'm not certain if those are all in business anymore, but they used to be.
Yeah.
And you put fentanyl in it, and you fly it over a Disneyland for 5 seconds, or you fly it over a stadium for 5 seconds. You release fentanyl, and we know that it takes 1 grain, like salt type grain, to actually, some people, it's a deadly, mixture. So, I mean, you could kill, hundreds of people in a, less than 30-second span by dropping fentanyl on them, and something, and the modus operandi would be using these drones, which are easily accessible. So when people start looking at, and they actually start thinking about it, again, I'm hoping that the people that are involved in the super classified stuff, that they're well aware of this. I know that agents are very well aware of this, and they're working to protect against it, because it's actually, we are very open, with our borders being number one concern, to having these biochemical attacks attack our people. And as they're able to come up with newer and better and more prominent weapons that they use militarily against other people, the United States, we don't have to be firing guns, and we don't have to see bombs dropped in our country to see some catastrophic events happen here in the United States, claiming millions of lives.
Well, and speaking of the borders, now we've got the Chagas diseases, but that's mainly from the rats, fleas on rats, as I understand.
Yeah.
Then we've got Ebola once again because of the Africans coming across. Smallpox. I mean, all these things you thought you got rid of. It's like.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's kind of concerning. Another concern that's out there is that we know the Russians have a huge biochemical arsenal, and the one of the reports that I was reading from the BioWatch people is that they don't know how secure that facility is, and that terrorists could actually go in somehow, and the security wasn't strong enough to prevent from certain like terrorist organizations who really wanted to get to those weapons. So if something like that, if that can happen in Russia, and they're worried about that there, you got to believe that these countries, we're in wars all over the Middle East, and there's an awful lot of people that don't like America, and a lot of those people will reside in South America. That's not an airplane ride to America. You just walk yourself up with the migrants, and you could bring stuff like that with you. This is the concern, and this is that's why I just kind of wanted to, take this issue and elevate it this week and talk about, more threats that, could, some serious consequences that could happen from people crossing the border illegally, and not making it a right or a left thing. It's a humanity issue. It's something where we all want to protect our children. We want to protect our parents and grandparents, and just go about our daily lives and not have to live in fear. But these issues are out there, and if you are well versed in that, then hopefully you'll be the one that's able to raise your hand, say, oh my gosh, I think something over here isn't right. So it comes back to that simple phrase: if you see something, say something. That's also very, very strong statement, and people get that.
Or out of sight, out of mind. People forget all the things. Even right here in the United States, we did mention the one in Oregon a little while ago. 1984, there was an anti-Semitic group called the Covenant. They had 30 gallons of potassium cyanide.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. 1994, anti-government militia, the Minnesota Patriots Council, and they were planning to use biological weapons for terror attacks, and they were stockpiling ricin.
Yeah.
Boy, I mean, that's about the worst you can get.
Yeah, there's a lot of that out there. Or, I mean, we know that, the left loves drinking Kool-Aid, so maybe they ought to be a little more careful drinking that Kool-Aid. This is smart.
Well, I'll tell you another thing I'm thinking about out here. You talk about, Russia and stockpiling this stuff, and then you never know, they have disasters over there.
Yeah.
But I hope they're not building any in California, in Southern California, because of the earthquakes. Now, could you imagine if some hate group out here had this big stash of bioterrorism weapons or diseases or whatever.
Sarin, they could have, there's a number of, there's sarin, they could have this stuff, and yes, an earthquake could destroy a building and release all that in the air, and that's another way of killing a lot of people. That's the worry with all the nuclear plants, I think. And
you think they're like a cult, and they say, "Oh, it wouldn't hit me. I'm the good guy, right?"
Well, we don't want to make light of it. It's a very serious topic, but it's also a topic where, I feel that, we haven't really talked about things that could really hurt or had the potential to, kill millions of people. We've talked about the EMP threats, where that's the electronic pulse, where it would go through and actually wipe out all the electricity and all of that. But this is something that, if we don't know who's crossing the borders, and we don't know what they're bringing across the border, and we're, even if we're arresting 50% of the people that cross, which is a very high number, that's not the number, but if you put it even in that, 50% of people you don't know, they could be bringing stuff like this. They could be bringing mountains and mountains of fentanyl, because it takes such a small, tiny amount to actually harm people, and even less. It's like a couple grains could kill children instantly upon contact, and that's a huge. And that's the drug that's actually behind this whole opioid crisis that's facing this country. It's not necessarily the Vicodin, and you can't go buy this at CVS. The opioids, but what they're mixing it with is that fentanyl, and it's that fentanyl that's killing people, and that's something they could do and use very easily anywhere in this country.
Going to take our break, and I'll come back with a new word for me here, and it's the CRISPR-Cas9. Yeah, I know it stands for a whole bunch, and we'll find out when we return to Kimberly Dvorak, Senior Foreign Policy Advisor for the Committee for Responsible Foreign Policy, and the website, The KD Report. Remember, she streams live, periscope.com, Facebook, and a little bit later on, you'll find this on YouTube. Editing tool, I guess, right? CRISPR-Cas9.
Yep, it is, and it's something.
You want to touch it?
Yeah, you don't want to touch it. Well, but this is the interesting thing with this. Right now, this is a process that's used by researchers to find cures for cancer, to treat various diseases that may or may not be transmitted via people. So this is something that our scientists are using to come up with cures for whatever these viruses that come at America are. What this program can also do is it can also alter a virus. It can change the genetics of a particular virus and render it useless with the antibiotics or the vaccines that we currently have. So if you get sick and you have bronchitis, you go to the doctor, they give you your antibiotics. A few days later, you feel better, all is well. Now, what they can do with this particular tool, again, predominantly used for good in this world, can also be used for evil, and that evil would be, making people sick. And it's like we were talking about with the pandemic flu. It could be something as simple as that. And it could, and of course, it's going to go after, and most essentially they kill young people and older people because they're the weakest in our population. But they can do something. They can use tools that we're using to try to keep people alive and cure horrible diseases. But they're able, if they want to use it the other way, there's new reports out that yes, they can use this. And that's where, again, the United States need to be very vigilant, and our monitoring facilities need to be looking at these types of new biochemical attacks that people that just want to kill Americans or Israelis, they're out there every day looking for that next fix that they can easily kill as many people. That's why most we probably aren't going to get attacked by bombs in this country. It's going to be some sort of biochemical attack, and that's it's a tough thing to fight against. It's unpredictable. Terrorists only have to be right once. We have to be right 100% of the time, and there is nothing more true in that statement than with this Casper tool that we currently use for good.
Kimberly, can they use this method to camouflage a virus that you wouldn't know was there, that would release itself later if that's possible?
They can, and you know what? When there's a catastrophic event, an earthquake, a tsunami, or something like that, then one of the first things that the Red Cross does, I mean, everybody brings blankets. They put blankets and give blankets and water to people. They can use the stuff and rub it on blankets and put it in the water, and then effectively kill these people without anybody really knowing until it happens. So these are the concerns that this country is going to face moving forward. It's like you said, it's been around since the dawning day of the cavemen. So they've learned to adapt and overcome. And in America, we're going to have to learn to adapt and overcome, and we're going to have to be very vigilant out there. And just know that our law enforcement people out there, they're working on this type of stuff every single day, and they don't get enough credit for it.
Speaking of blankets, right? Flashing back, 1763, British officers distributed smallpox-infected blankets to Native Americans at Fort Pitt, Pennsylvania. During the Civil War, Kentucky Governor Luke Blackburn sewed Union troops' clothing contaminated with smallpox and yellow fever. You see, listener, it's been going for a long time. Hey, we're all out of time, Kimberly. Wow, thank you. Excellent report. Kimberly Dvorak, the KD Report. Look for CW6 News San Diego, One America News Network, and streaming live at Periscope.com, Facebook.